Hey everybody, this is Jacqueline Lukman.
And I'm the other half, Abdul Lukman.
And I know it's a little early for us here in Lukman Nation, but we were sitting here watching the coverage on CNN of the white supremacist rally in Charlottesville. Can't call it anything other than that. You can call them the alt-right all you want to, but they're racist. That's what they always have been. Same people, same ideas, same ideology, just a new name. And we just really had to come and share some of our thoughts with you guys.
Yeah, since we couldn't be down there today.
Yeah, with look, like we always say, we're working folks. We've got an old car that probably wouldn't have made it down there and back. So we couldn't get down there today. Although looking at this footage, man, I mean, we really wish we could have made it down there.
Oh yeah.
Today, and so we just kind of wanted to share some of our thoughts on not just this incident, but just stuff in general. And like we said, we know it's a little early. What did you? Oh, Helen, that's a great comment. Helen Ford, how you doing? Helen said they really got a death grip on their imaginary white pride.
They do. I mean, it's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, I mean, so we were talking as we were watching this, and our friends, Anna Edwards and Phil Willado of the Virginia Defenders are down there right now, and I'm sure they're not going to see this right now, but hopefully they'll see this later. And we certainly hope that they are well, they're safe, and if we know Phil and Anna, that they are in the thick of something.
Oh yeah.
And we know a couple other people who were going to be down there, so we definitely want people to be safe. At the same time, it was just reported on CNN that the Richard Spencer and his ilk have been planning this for, what they say, 2 months?
It's been, about a couple of months.
And these people have come down there with shields, and some people with like police shields.
Yeah.
Where they got them from, who knows? But well, come on, let's be real now. One of the CNN commentators said, well, usually the police would respond immediately when people come off the bus and they see that people have things that can be used as weapons. And I don't know why the police didn't stop these people when they came off the. What do you mean you don't know why? It's Charlottesville. They're related to have these damn people out there.
Yep, that's right.
Don't be ridiculous. But of course, the person who said that, the CNN commentator who said that, was our favorite former NYPD racist, Harry Hook.
Yeah, Harry Hook. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get.
He's never seen a racist he didn't support.
Never. He's never seen an unarmed victim, a black unarmed victim of police violence who he couldn't find a justification
Who didn't deserve it.
Who didn't deserve to die.
Right.
He just has never seen it. And again, Harry Hoop, the same guy. Now here it is. The white supremacists are down there with shields, and they're
long guns.
Yeah, they've got long guns. They are armed.
Yep.
Virginia is an open carry state, but it was the white supremacists who came out there with long guns, with shields, with body armor. And one of the other commentators said, listen, the white supremacists are out here. They're obviously out here looking for a fight, looking to antagonize. And who was it but good old Harry Hoop?
Harry Hoop. Yeah.
Who says, well, all I hear you talk about is it's the right. It's the right. What about the left?
Oh, he's so consistent. You can always count on him.
But let me tell you, I mean, this is something that Abdus and I and other people who been activists for a while have talked about. And I've been kind of afraid to say it publicly because, people take stuff the wrong way and they don't, I'm just going to say it. They will show up to defend their right to whatever ridiculous, hateful belief they have, armed to the teeth every time. Every time. I don't understand why we keep believing that we are going to be able to negotiate with these people and march and link arms and pray and reason with these people. You can't reason with white supremacy. The only way we are going to dispel this force is if they're met with force.
Exactly.
So, watching this, because we got CNN on in the background over here. And I know some people would look at this and look at the young brothers out there, with their t-shirts covering their faces, getting ready for the tear gas. Mm-hmm. They're out there with sticks and their RBG flags, and there are white soldiers out there too, our white allies out there too, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder,
right.
back to back with the brother. You know what? That makes my heart proud.
Yeah, it does.
Because look, we either fight or die.
It does. That's right.
That's what they think. That's what the white supremacists think. Why do you think they're out there with their guns? You don't think those guns are armed? You don't think they've been waiting for a chance to shoot a couple of niggas? Yes, they have. Mm-hmm. That's why they come out there like that with helmets and shields and armed and loaded long guns. They're not playing.
That's right. But this whole symbolism of the shields and the guns and all this stuff, they actually believe that they're fighting a revolution. Literally. I mean, that's what the shields and the guns are all about. It's to send a message, that this whole alt-right, this whole militarized white supremacy. And that's what it is. It's not a white supremacy. It's not, Richard Spencer, I read in the paper, he stated something about, the removal. Because remember now, those of you who don't know, and I'm sure most of you are watching already know the reason why they're assembled down there, is because the statue of Robert E. Lee is the city has decided to bring it down, and this is just one in an effort by many municipalities, especially throughout the South, to remove Confederate statues and all these monuments dedicated to Confederate war heroes and politicians, and streets are being renamed, and and some people have a problem with that. Not just on the alt-right, you have other people who don't subscribe to that ideology that have a problem with it because they think that it's an attempt to towards revisionist history. Mm-hmm. It's ugly, that this part of our history is ugly, but we shouldn't want to go about removing statues and stuff, because what are we saying? We're trying to erase history. That's the other side of the argument. And that's understandable. But we're going to move forward as a nation. We can't keep on giving honor to people who sought to keep people enslaved. Right. We can't give honor to treasonous people, because let's look at it now. The sedition on the part of the Confederacy was treason. It was an act of treason. Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, all those actors in this, they were all considered, they were all treasonous in their attempts against the federal government, which is the reason why the Civil War had to be fought. So do we have monuments of other traitors to this country? Around, do we have monuments to other people who tried to undermine the foundation of this country? No. But this romanticism with the Confederacy has to stop. Yeah. Now you could romanticize privately all you want. Like Jackie and I used to talk about when the whole controversy with the Confederate flag. You want to fly a flag in your backyard, on your private property, and all those type of things. We don't have a problem with it. The problem of it is when everyone's tax dollars go to the parks, to state buildings, and everything that the public uses. There should not be a romanticizing of Confederate heroes and anything about the Confederacy. Right. You want to learn about Confederacy. That's what museums are for. That's what school classes are for. Mm-hmm. That's what the books are for. I mean, there's plenty. We can still read up on the Nazis, but you ain't gonna go nowhere in Germany and see Heinrich Himmler statue.
Exactly.
And, in the center of Berlin.
Nope.
Nah, man, that's the shameful part of history. And they don't want that celebrated. It's the same thing over here. We should not be celebrating people who sought to keep other folks enslaved, and made it a right of and went so far as to fight a war in order to maintain the right to enslave and dehumanize human beings.
Right.
So I mean, that's, and I think that these municipalities that are doing this, no one's saying that the statues are being destroyed. They're just saying, look, we don't want it in the center of a park where everybody else uses it. Well, some municipalities say, well, we'll take it to a museum. Mm-hmm. We'll take it somewhere where people can view it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest with this, Jackie, is the fact that the whole protest here is not about just Robert E. Lee's statue.
Right.
Richard Spencer, the big mouth leader of the Alt-Right, said that, oh no, this is about erasing white culture from this country. Are you serious?
Right. I mean, and that's the thing that blows my mind. It's like what we are taught in school from elementary school, what we are taught even in college, the way we're taught the history of this country, all of that is white history. And I mean, we're really not taught that anything great was done in this country unless it was done by white people. That's why these monuments are still up. How in the world can we continue to perpetuate the myth that America is this melting pot, right? Where we all come together, mm-hmm. and you put all the ingredients in the pot and the stew melts and it's all one, lovely, delicious, beautiful, aromatic mixture. And you can't tell one ingredient from the other. That's what melting pot means. But see, when you have in the public sphere, in public arenas, monuments to people who fought a war to continue to enslave people and expand that institution, how in the world can we be a melting pot?
Right. That's why we said it was a smoldering mess.
This country is a smoldering mess, and it's been a smoldering mess because the issue of racism has never been dealt with, honestly, in this country. Never.
And with calls from the left, or some people from the left, talking about identity politics, and we talked about this before, about how we need to move past identity politics. We need to silly ideas of working with racists. And now you expect us. Now look, what's going on down there right now in Charlotte with the alt-right and all this other kind of stuff. You actually think that they're going to sit down at a table with me. Because even those of you that watch us sometimes run when I start talking. So you actually think that they're going to sit down with the likes of me or Jacqueline or even someone, so-called less provocative, one of the so-called safe Negroes that everybody feel comfortable with. Yep. Do you actually think that they're going to actually sit around the round table and talk about, well, let's see how we both can work together on this. Let's see how, now anything's possible. But let me tell you something. The alt-right and the reason why this is the largest gathering of white supremacists in one area mm-hmm. in recent times or memory is because they've been emboldened by the present administration. Mm-hmm. They've been emboldened by Trump and all of his henchmen around them. Yep. They've been emboldened. Let me tell you something. The message has been clear to them for quite some time mm-hmm. that we need to take this country back. You've been hearing it during the Obama era. Yep. We need to take this country back. That has been the rallying cry since Obama became president. That has been the rallying cry. And these poor whites, because that's what most of them are once again fulfilling the role that they've always fulfilled in history. When the white elite start talking that stuff, the white poor has always been their foot soldiers. Mm-hmm. Even though they're getting screwed with the rest of us. But see, when that message can come out, take our country back, the orders were loud and clear. So that's why they come out there with the shields and all this stuff, because in their minds, they know they're the foot soldiers. Yep. And that's why they come out. And let's be clear about one thing. You don't have to be a functioning state to think that you're a state. What do I mean by that? ISIS, for example, consider themselves an Islamic state. Now, no one recognizes them as an Islamic state, but in their minds, every time they take over territory, every time that they subjugate people forcefully to their ideology, let's look at it, ideology. And every time they forcefully, every time they do these things, they don't have to have the United States or the rest of the world declare them a state or recognize them a state. In their minds, they're an Islamic state.
That's true.
So the apparatuses, all of the symbolism, all of the infrastructure, whether even if they take it from somebody else and just graffiti ISIS on the side of it, it belongs to them. So the reason why these monuments are so important, because you could lose a war physically, you can even lose a war in a lot of ways, but if the ideology is still existing, if the monuments are still there, then you can still be a Confederate state, even if it's in practice within your heart.
Yep.
And so that's what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about when you have the NAACP in Missouri make an advisory to black folks saying, don't come here. Because it has gotten so bad for black people in Missouri to the point where the president of the NAACP is saying, please don't come out here. Now, this is 2017.
Right.
And you have to tell American citizens, which that's what they claim we are, that we're not supposed to go out there to Missouri because of the mistreatment of black people coming through that state. So you do not have to have a functioning government. You don't have to have a confederacy that is existing in the forms that we know government to exist.
Right, that's separate from the apparatus of the American government.
All it takes is an ideology.
And really, all it takes is an ideology and people who are already in positions of power and authority who can use their power and authority to advance that ideology. And how many times have we told you that there are people who are racists who are already in power and authority? I mean, were y'all really surprised when Donald Trump issued the travel ban and all of a sudden all of these Border Patrol agents and ICE agents, all of a sudden these people, like the next day, they start messing with people?
They were like the Gestapo.
I mean, do you think, I mean, seriously, do you think ICE and Border Patrol and the INS hired all of these crazy people overnight? No, they were always there. That is the only way this order could be issued by Donald Trump. And like the next week, there are all these stories coming out of all of these people being mistreated. But these people have always been in these positions. They just felt like the government wasn't on their side. Donald Trump is in office. No, Brewski, you cannot get on the bed. Our dog has been trying to get on the bed.
He has something to say.
I mean, they've been in these positions for a while. They just felt like the government wasn't on their side. But now Donald Trump comes out and says exactly what they've been thinking. So then they just go and do what they've always wanted to do. I mean, I just don't. It frustrates me, I think, when I see so many young people. What do we call them today?
Bernie pups.
Bernie pups.
Yeah, the Bernie pups.
That's our new phrase for people who have been awakened by Bernie Sanders.
Their introduction to politics.
They're new to politics.
Right.
Or at least they're
new.
Right. They're new to political activism on a level where it affects them. Right. So they're pups still. They're not full grown wolves. They're not quite cubs. Yeah. You know, they're still on the milk.
Right.
But they're pups still. They have yet to reach wolf stage. And they're shocked. They're very emotional in their response. You know, somebody needs to do something about this because it's wrong. Yeah, it's wrong. We've been telling you it's wrong for the past 60, 70 years. Yes, it is wrong. But these people aren't going to change things because we stand there and tell them this is the wrong thing to do. If you didn't watch the interview I did with Lawrence Ham Thursday night, I think I posted a link on this page, but it's definitely on Brick by Brick. Lawrence Ham said something that just blew my mind, and it is something that that Pete Perry, our friend Pete Perry, veteran activist here in DC, Pete Perry is always talking about shutting shit down, and sometimes it's like, Pete, we got to take a diplomatic, a political approach, but there are times when shutting shit down are absolutely necessary. And Lawrence Ham echoed that last night, where he said that we were able to get the Civil Rights Act passed. Civil Rights Act of 1965 passed. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 passed. I bet you didn't know there was more than one. The Civil Rights Act of 1965 actually wasn't even the first one. Civil Rights Act of 1968, better known as the Fair Housing Act, passed. We were able to get the Education Act passed, which was another Civil Rights Act. And what was the other one? Oh, the Voting Rights Act. We were able to get the Voting Rights Act passed. How were we able to get those 4 pieces of legislation passed? Because Black people got out in the streets, Black people and white people who were not afraid to put their lives, their bodies, their resources, their time, their feet on the line for justice and equality. We got out in the street and we agitated for that change. We didn't have to know how economic theory worked.
No.
We didn't need to know how money worked. Nobody knew anything about MMT at that time. Nobody cared.
We didn't even know we was off the gold standard.
We didn't know we were off the gold standard.
Right.
It didn't matter to us because we ain't had no gold, no way. We ain't had no money, no way. It didn't matter to us. What mattered to us was that as American citizens, we were supposed to be given equal protection under the law and an equal access to opportunity. And we knew damn well we weren't getting it, and we were damn tired of it.
That's right.
And we got out of our homes, our crappy, segregated, police over patrolled neighborhoods, and we got in the streets and we got in people's faces, and yes, we were afraid.
And a few cities had to burn.
And a few cities, I'm sorry y'all,
they had to burn.
but a few cities had to burn. Yep. Because listen, there is an iconic photograph that you talk about all the time, babe.
Yeah, I love it, yeah.
There's an iconic photograph, and I think it was on the cover of Time magazine it was an aerial view. I know somebody just left because they're like, no, they're advocating violence. No, we're advocating self-defense.
Right.
And if you don't understand the difference between violence just for the sake of kicking somebody's behind and self-defense in defense of your rights as a human being, then this is not the revolution for you.
Well, I'll tell you this. You be part of a group who's been discriminated and marginalized for 500 years. You be part of a group that all the institutions in a country that you help make great, that your people help make great. You be part of a group where you're at the bottom of everything, no matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do. Jackie and I was talking today during breakfast. We were discussing, what we read in the book Stand from the Beginning, which I advise everyone to get that book. And they have a term that they call uplift suasion, a term that I was not familiar with until I read the book. And uplift suasion is basically the respectability thing, that blacks, that we have to somehow, elevate ourselves morally, and we have to be perfect people,
right,
in order for white people to stop hating us and to remove pressure. So that, this concept is old. That's why I say uplift suasion.
It's like 600 years old.
It goes way back. So what we're saying is the fact that even in spite of even trying that, which the civil rights movement was all about, uplift suasion. Yeah. So even after all of that, after allowing our heads to be beat in and being forgiving and having our people killed in church and publicly stating how we forgive and all this other kind of stuff, and still see that these type of jokers still show up, and so uplift suasion doesn't work. You know, it never have worked. It needs to be abandoned as any kind of strategy because it doesn't work. People are either going to respect your humanity or they're not.
Exactly.
You know, so the thing of it is to be afraid when folks when people of color start talking about some cities had to burn. Well, damn it, the hell, Boston burned during the Revolution. I mean, Sherman burnt down Atlanta. You know what I mean? During the Civil War. So, so those were tactics of war. And if you don't think that now you might not understand it, but to think that we don't understand that we've been in the war all this time, the war has been physical, like most wars. It has been physical at times. It has been ideologically logical at times. It has been through the written word.
It's been spiritual.
It's been spiritual a lot of time. This war has been fought on many fronts. And unfortunately, some of it has been violent. Now, we're not advocating violence, but like Chris Rock said, I understand. You know what I mean? So when we say that, when Jackie was giving the example of what it took to move this government forward, to actually, they didn't give us anything. The only thing they did was live up to their damn constitution.
That's all.
That we were supposed to benefit from anyway.
Exactly.
They really shouldn't have had to go through all of that with the voting rights. We was guaranteed that under the Constitution, but because they didn't live up to it.
Exactly.
This is what had to be done in order to push them to live up to your own damn document.
And that's the thing. That's the perspective that people don't look at our struggles, all those uprising that Larry Ham talked about in my interview.
Now the police are starting to move in now.
Oh yeah.
Because they declared the gathering unlawful.
Right.
So now the police are moving in, as we see.
Right.
And what are the white supremacists doing? They got their shields up.
Oh, they got the shields
and they are combating the police.
Right.
Now the last time I remember black folks doing that, man, I mean, because Jackie and I was there in Baltimore.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah, we seen military style aircraft, alleys with wall to wall National Guardsmen standing waiting. I mean, the tanks were there, all of this stuff.
Right.
Now you got here where they're not backing down.
No.
So now the uplift suasion thing is that, well, if you want us to listen to your grievances, then why don't you just obey the police? Tell your folks
that, because they're the ones who are out here. Out in Charlottesville right now with military and police gear, pepper spraying people. They have pepper spray and they are pepper spraying counter protesters. Any one of them got shot? Now look, I'm not advocating for anybody to get shot. I'm just saying, if the police are shooting down unarmed black people because I don't understand why the police don't see any of these white supremacists out here with their shields coming out here looking for a fight as a threat. But see, this is the threat that we live with in some form, like we just said, educationally, socially, spiritually. And yeah, it has been spiritual. And one day we're gonna have a conversation about how our faith as Christians has been co-opted from its introduction as Puritanism in this country with racist ideas. It's not that the gospel of Jesus Christ is racist.
No, it's that the racists co-opted.
That's it.
And what we're experiencing right now, and what we talk about right now, is the fact that this country is facing. You always hear this term moral. Well, the country is facing a spiritual crisis. A moral crisis, but let's say a spiritual crisis that this country is facing right now. It is a spiritual crisis because when you hate people based upon the way the Creator created them, when you have a problem with extending justice to other people, when you have a problem with not understanding the grievances of oppressed people, then that is a disease of the heart.
Yep.
And that's what we have in this country. And that starts from the top. I remember when Barack Obama was president, I used to hear the people on the right all the time saying that they were disappointed in President Obama because they thought that he was going to heal the racial divide. As if 8 years was going to erase hundreds of years of discrimination, lynching, and disenfranchisement, and all the other kind of stuff.
He's a magical Negro.
Right. The magical Negro. Obama was supposed to just come up on the scene with his charismatic, articulate self, and but that was another form of persuasion. That because he was, as what a lot of people or white folks would consider. Now see, if you were more like Barack Obama, we would understand. But see, even Barack Obama, with his decision not to talk about identity politics, with his decision to want to work with the racists, the right, the conservatives, with his always, as Michelle Obama would say, when they go low, we go high. That all sounds noble, Jesus. But all of that is rooted in uplift persuasion. Is the fact that we're just going to love you until you understand that we're people too.
We're going to force you to believe to respect our humanity by being as respectable as we possibly can.
But when they found out that that's not the way you do it, and Jackie said earlier, you can't negotiate with white supremacy. You can't negotiate with that. So what happened is the fact that, again, that's a disease of the heart. Now we go from Obama and we got that dude in there, you know what I mean? Cheeto head. He up in there now. And now all of a sudden now, he don't make any bones about trying to heal the divide of anything. He ran on speaking to the interests of white supremacy. He ran on a platform of white supremacist behavior and thinking. He surrounded himself with Bannon and all those ones who were connected to white supremacy. And now now the arrogance that he had is the fact that he's taking us closer and closer to what I believe will eventually become some kind of nuclear skirmish. And I pray to God that doesn't happen. This man got on the TV and said that, he's thinking about sending troops down there to Venezuela. Now, you could tell someone who's never been in combat, because any soldier who's been in combat, they will tell you, any warrior will tell you that, they're the last ones that want to go to war. It's not that they ain't got the heart for it, but they the last ones because they know the cost of war. But see, when you got billionaires running this country, when you got billionaires in the government, then you know what? People don't matter to them.
People are nothing more than entries on a spreadsheet to these people. Donald Trump is nothing more than the bastard love child of the orgy between American racism, capitalism, and militarism.
Ooh, Brewski, give me a paw. I gotta get that one. Give me a paw. Good boy, good boy. Ooh.
He almost did it too. I mean, people were remember that live stream we did when we were sitting in this very spot at 11:30 on election night, and we were laughing our behinds off because we knew that Donald Trump was going to win this election, because we knew the kind of attitude, the secret thought. It's not like we can read people's minds. We know the history. We know the history of this country, and we knew that people tolerated that second term of Barack Obama because McCain messed up so badly the first time around. Otherwise, he would have been president if he hadn't chose Sarah Palin. And the second time, honestly, Mitt Romney, nobody wanted to vote for Mitt Romney. But people tolerated that second term of Barack Obama, and they thought, you know what? we don't want any more. We don't want any more of America's experiment and diversity as far as running this country is concerned. Not running the country. No, we don't want that. And if you think it was just the crazy racist who felt that way, you're sadly mistaken. And there is a lot of anti-black sentiment, anti-black, anti-immigrant, anti-Latino, anti-woman resentment floating around in what we think even are the liberal bastions. We saw that with the young women who interrupted Bernie Sanders' speech in where was that? Seattle? I I mean, people, I don't understand.
I mean, this is the home of this was the home of grunge. I was surprised,
Hey!
man, that you know.
But I like grunge.
No, I'm not saying that. I did too. But I'm saying that, you know, all of these so-called liberal, these liberal enclaves, these so-called liberal enclaves, and you see this kind of stuff happening. That was the same city, you know, not to get off point, but that was the same city where some person comes in and call a college professor the N-word, and a bunch of, you know, I'm sure they would all call themselves progressives and liberals, but they all sat there and nobody said a word.
Right. Oh,
You know,
at the Starbucks. That's right.
Yeah, at the Starbucks, you know what I mean? But on the other hand, it was also in that same area. It wasn't Seattle, but it was Portland. It was also in that same area where white people gave their lives trying to protect a Muslim woman from a crazed white nationalist. So, you know, so we make it clear, Jackie and I, that when we say these things to prick the consciousness of the people. It's not to incite hatred of anybody, because we realize that as black folks and as a minority in this country, there's no way we could have made the grounds that we made without having some really strong white allies on our side.
Exactly.
And we realize that. So, you know, when we say these things, man, that's the context we want to put it in. What we're trying to do is tell the rest of our allies to get off the fence.
That's the thing.
That is what we're trying to say.
That is the
Get
key.
off the fence.
You know, and please,
Bastions, thank you, Chanel. See, we got an intelligent audience.
This is why
Bastions,
we love
that's
y'all.
what I'm talking
this
about.
is why we love having conversations with y'all.
Bastions, that's what I'm talking about.
Because you help us with our thoughts when we just get carried away with stuff.
Yeah.
And I just realized I never finished my thought about the picture of why some cities needed to burn. I mean, listen, when people are fighting for their rights, and it's not the uprisings in the 60s happened not because black people are so messed up and we don't know any other way to do things. Those uprisings happened because we were still enduring systemic racism in every aspect of society in the North and in the South, even after the Civil Rights Act was passed. So we did everything we were told we were supposed to do, right? We marched peacefully. The Civil Rights Movement was basically a Southern movement. And the leaders of the Civil Rights Movement wasn't just Martin Luther King Jr. There were other leaders too, and there were women who were involved as well who don't get a lot of exposure. But they had an image. The whole uplift suasion,
yeah.
The respectability. We have to present ourselves a certain way for them to take us seriously.
Yeah.
So when we protested, when our children went out and protested, left school and protested, yes, they were dressed a certain way. They sang hymns. They marched arm in arm.
They knelt in the street and
prayed.
prayed.
They knelt in the street and prayed and still got their heads beat in by billy clubs. So then all of that agitation finally gets the Civil Rights Act passed, and let's make something really clear.
But it wasn't because of the suasion as much as it was embarrassment.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because what got the Civil Rights Act of 1965 passed was the televising of Bloody Sunday on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Understand what that means. Up until that point, there had been a few decades of agitation by black people in the South that started before the Montgomery bus boycott, where we're fighting for our lives and we're doing it the right way, and nothing. We get nothing. But then the television cameras come down and capture law enforcement violently pummeling unarmed, peaceful black protesters on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and then the conscience of some of America, because it still wasn't most of America, the conscience of some of America was pricked to the point where they said, well, dang, I guess we don't have to treat them like that.
Right. That's right. And the fact that politically, Johnson, and we know this stuff now from the Freedom of Information Act, but that Johnson worried about his foreign policy. Because he stated, like, man, how are we going to go into the United Nations to talk about all this freedom and democracy? And the world is watching how we're treating African Americans in this country.
Right.
So it was a political thing, too. It was embarrassing America, as Jackie said, on the world stage.
Yep.
Because now you remember we was in the midst of the Cold War. So you had the two ideologies of communism and democracy going head to head, trying to proselytize other nations and win them over to their camp. So now you got the world looking like, well, I don't know if I want to go in the United States camp because they don't, they talk all that democracy and freedom and stuff, but they don't, they're not showing that to their black citizens.
Right.
So, so that also was a big determining factor. If people don't realize this or not, why a lot of African nations wound up being under the umbrella of the Soviet Union. It wasn't because they liked the Russians any better, but they seen the hypocrisy that America was putting forth, and they seen that and they was like, I don't know, we want any kind of part of that. So, so the political part of their the political part of the civil rights movement, as Jackie was saying, it had nothing to do with persuasion. Had nothing to do with how respectable Rosa Parks and all them was. Because black folks was acting that way ever since when they first started with the American Colonization Society, when America wanted to deport all of us. Or as one French visitor stated when he came to America, he said he only saw two solutions for the American problem, which was us. We were always a social problem. So he said, the only thing I can see in this country to deal with the social problem of black people is to send them back to Africa or exterminate them. You know what I mean? So that was his thing. But that was one of the main reasons why a lot of this legislation was passed. Like Jackie said, it was people on the street, cities burning, but it was also world opinion.
Exactly.
That meant a lot.
Yep. And you had this picture, finally getting back to the picture now, this iconic picture that was on the cover of Time magazine, I think, that also that helped to influence the world and some in this country, where you had an aerial view of the United States Capitol in the foreground, and in the background you had like pillars, columns of smoke coming up where some areas were on fire. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about Washington, D.C., you watched us long enough, you know that we always talk about how close we live to the Capitol. Washington, D.C. is not a big city. But it is bigger than the United States Capitol. People live here, not just those jerks who work up on the Hill. But Capitol Hill is less than 10 miles from here. So the people who were making the decisions to disenfranchise and discriminate against the people who live just 10 miles from them could look out their window at work and see the results of their, I can't even call it negligence. It was malevolence. It was willful negligence. And see the results of the policies that they'd either ignored or passed. And there was no way they could ignore that anymore. There was no way. So what they did was they passed a bunch of acts. They didn't pass laws. See, this is where we, black folks, this is where we drop the ball. And our allies too. This is where we drop the ball. Because once the Civil Rights Acts were passed, we said, oh, we've accomplished, we've arrived, we're not being discriminated against as much. We can apply to colleges now and they won't, deny us because we're black. We can get better housing. They can't keep us from living wherever we want, wherever we can afford. Although we found out now in 2017, that ain't true. But that we believe that these pieces of legislation ended racial discrimination in this country. It wasn't just white people who believed that. Some black people did too. So some black people who were able to take advantage of the opportunities that these pieces of legislation expanded, largely the black middle class. This is going to be hurtful to some people, but the black middle class basically left the black masses behind, the black poor behind. And they were able to take advantage of these new opportunities that these acts opened up. But the issue is these acts didn't end discrimination against black people, as even black middle class people found out, because they continued to face discrimination.
That's right.
It just wasn't concentrated. It just wasn't as overt But for the black masses, the black poor, oh, they still got it every day. Because, see, their neighborhoods were where the police always were. They lived in places where there were no jobs, there were no opportunities, where the schools were becoming more and more inadequate, more and more underfunded. But the black middle class that benefited directly, that generation that benefited directly from the Civil Rights Act being passed, they began to believe more in the uplift suasion. And that wasn't something that was new. The whole, some black people looking at poor black people and saying, well, you need to live better in order for people to treat you better. That's not new, because that's been conditioned in us. But see, the struggle has never ended for us. It's never, ever ended. The reason these pieces of legislation aren't laws is because they were written in a way that they would expire over a period of time, and that they would have to be relitigated, right? So the Civil Rights Act expires. The Civil Rights Act of 1965 expires at some point, and then it has to be re-argued. And the argument is, do we still need that? Now, what other part of the Constitution, does that need to be relitigated? Does the Constitution need to be re-argued? Does the Bill of Rights need to be re-argued? Then explain to me why it is we let these people get away with writing some legislation that pertains to our rights as not just American citizens, but as human beings. And we let them write it in a way that it expires, and they're the ones who get to determine whether we continue to have equal protection under the law and equal access to opportunity in this country. Well, that was accurate because it is a corporation. And we think we've made it. That's where we drop the ball.
Because the ideology, and we stated this earlier, that's the reason why.
Sorry, that's my
we're
phone.
Busy.
And it's on the doorknob, so it'll just have to ring.
Yep. So, and that's one of the reasons why we stated earlier that these statues, it's not about the statues. Mm-hmm. It's not about all of those other things. I mean, those, you don't have to, again, to reiterate my point earlier, is that you don't have to actually have a Confederate state or even a white supremacist state. You don't really have to have that as a real apparatus. It could just be ideological, and it could still function like that. Jefferson Davis once stated on the Senate floor when it talked about when the bill came up to educate black people, and he stated, and he wasn't the only one that stated this. He said this country was founded by white men for white men. Mm-hmm. He stated that. A couple of other prominent politicians have stated that. So why is it now that we're still living in a country that still underfunds black education?
Right.
Why do we still live in a country where in the North, back in the 1800s, or maybe earlier in the 1700s, I believe, why is it that in the North that non-slave holding whites in Massachusetts were required to serve on slave patrols?
Required.
I mean, they were required, not volunteer, required.
Like a military draft.
Right, if you didn't own slaves. Why is it that we still live in a country where black areas are still heavily policed by what? Non-property owning white people. That's who are mostly in the police force. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to actually have on paper that the United States is a white supremacist, white male supremacist nation that was set up for that purpose. All we have to do is see how it functions. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Going back to ISIS again. ISIS don't have any land that the world recognizes as being an Islamic state, but they still have courts. Yeah. They still have their police. Mm-hmm. They still have a government, their government apparatuses, as illegal as it may be. Yep. They are still carrying on what they consider are state functions, even though they don't have what we call borders and all this other kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Why? Because nation states, especially in this day and time, nation states really don't exist anymore. You know, nation states are basically, ideological,
Right.
but, again, what we wanted to talk about, is the fact, because Chanel, I wanted to get back to the point Chanel was talking about this world opinion against, Cheeto, you know what I mean? And Trump, the fact that she's right is that world opinion is, there's gotta be somebody that's trying to reach us real badly, but,
nobody that important.
But anyway, again, yes, she's right. This administration doesn't care. Like white supremacy didn't care about what the rest of the world thought about the United States during slavery.
That's right.
You know what I mean? White
That's
supremacy didn't care. They actually used their best intellectuals to, even when Britain that gave up their slave trade and others have given up their slave trade, and they were condemning the United States for it, and was the United States wasn't embarrassed by that world opinion, because one of the brightest minds of that time even came to the defense of the slave-holding United States government to justify why slavery in the United States has to continue. So that white arrogance, that white supremacist arrogance, is still existing today in the form of the Trump administration, to the point where you have the rest of the world saying, negotiate with North Korea, or maybe so that we don't move forward to any kind of nuclear conflict, maybe we might just have to, accept nuclear North Korea as a nuclear power. They ain't gonna be able to really do anything, but maybe we might just have to live. I mean, we're living with Pakistan,
right?
We're living with India,
right?
We live with Israel for decades, knowing they got nuclear weapons.
We help them get nuclear
weapons. We live with a nuclear France. We live with a nuclear Russia.
What's one more?
Right. So the thing of it is that maybe we might that might just be something we might have to just live with. That's just But when you dealing with that type of arrogance, and when you're dealing with people who, when you're dealing with people who think of other human beings as nothing, killing millions of people just the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
Sending the military down. Now, listen, think about it. Sending the military down to Venezuela, because the people there want self-determination. Isn't that something? Aren't we the country that's supposed to promote that? Aren't we the country that's supposed to, you always heard this, promote our values. People should be able to decide for themselves. Well, the Venezuelans is trying to sort that out. Most of them miss Chavez. So now what Trump does, oh no, it's not about democracy. It's not about self-determination. No, we're going to send the military down there and impose corporatocracy on them, because that's all it is. So when we look at this, we understand that the people who are going to be going down there, the people you see right there on the news that's fighting now, it's the poor white foot soldiers and their children. It's the blacks who've always, came to the rescue and always filled the ranks, who our numbers are overrepresented in the military. So, so you got these billionaires who won't give these poor whites minimum wage increases.
Nope.
But your kids could damn sure go to Venezuela and fight.
Oh yeah.
In order to protect corporate interests down there.
And it's while we were talking, and I was actually laughing because, I told you our dog Brewski has been trying to get on the bed the whole time. Somehow our 100-pound dog managed to hop on the end of the bed really gently and quietly and without shaking the camera. I don't even know how this big clumsy oaf did that, but that was the funniest thing. But Melania Trump, they posted a tweet that she published, and she said, we need to communicate without hate in our hearts, because violence doesn't result in anything positive. Are you serious? Do you not know how this country was founded? This country was founded on violence. The very same people who tell us that we shouldn't be violent. Oh, now there's this picture of this guy, this black guy shaking hands with the racist in the man.
Media loves that.
I am sick and so sick and damn tired. My behind itches. I'm so tired of y'all thinking that we can just have a Pepsi and a smile with these people, and we can just pour out our warm Christian loving thoughts on them, and they are going to look at us as their equals. The way they came out here that today and last night, because I don't know if you know it or not, but the night before last night, they went out to the monument, and the white supremacists went out to the monument with tiki torches. Mm-hmm. Like the Klan would show up. I know you've heard the stories of the Klans, and you've even seen it in movies of the Klan lighting crosses on fire. This is not innocent imagery. This is not just, somebody's random idea. Oh, hey, let's go out there with some torches. They know what they're doing. We keep treating these people like they're like accidentally racist.
Well, but that picture of the black man who's going around shaking the hands of the white supremacists. See, once again, the media is just as complicit in this, or implicit.
Oh my God!
Because again, it goes back to them even underhandedly or indirectly supporting this up persuasion. Mm-hmm. See, they're not all bad.
Right.
Look at this. The burden of race relations have always been put on the backs of black people. Mm-hmm. So now it's like, that one image right there is like, well, he's shaking hands and stuff, because after all, like William Lloyd Garrison said to the white enslavers when he was trying to get them to support the repatriation of African Americans back to Africa. Mm-hmm. What he said was, they are naturally loving and forgiving and religious. So we have to understand where this nonsense comes from.
Magical Negroism.
Right. So now all of a sudden the media plays into that, and they show this big black man who should be taking their heads off, sitting up there, shaking the hands of all of these people, because that's how America loves to see their black men. They love to see black men as being this, harmless, little teddy bears. You know what I mean? And so the thing of it is that he's shaking these hands and stuff. And the message is the fact that, see, you know what I mean? In spite of all, it's still rooted in this uplift persuasion. So, so we're going to end with this one more topic, because we do enjoy you guys spending a little bit of Saturday with us. And this will take the place of our show later on. So, but, Trump had announced, and we're going to end with this topic. Trump had announced that the opioid epidemic in America is very bad, and it's horrible, and something must be done about it. It's So what Trump does is he makes this statement, and he makes this statement. And as we know, the opioid epidemic is worse than the crack epidemic was, as far as taking lives and victims and all this other kind of stuff. So Trump, I have a friend that lives in Martinsburg, West Virginia, who stated to me that Trump just gave that town $500 million to deal with their opioid crisis. Now, if anybody knows about Martinsburg, West Virginia, or West Virginia, period, it has the highest opiate deaths in the country.
Wow.
Martinsburg alone, a couple of weeks ago, Martinsburg, West Virginia, had 266 people die in one weekend.
Oh my God.
Off of fentanyl overdoses. St. Mary's County is coming up there pretty quickly. In this DMV area, in this area that we live in, opioid deaths are at epidemic proportions. So Trump was right to bring national attention to that. I'm not going to criticize him for that. What I will criticize some of the municipalities on how they're dealing with it. During the crack era, there were no innocent victims. Mm-mm. Crack, we came up with the term crackheads and fiends and all this stuff. And that wasn't just by white people. It was by black people too. And so what happens was that crack addicts were basically criminalized, mm-hmm. along with the people who sold the crack. Mm-hmm. Because as we know, and we've said this plenty of times, and other people have said it prior to, is that crack was looked at as a black problem. And we don't want to rehash the origins of all of that. But now the opioid epidemic that we have right now is basically seen as a white suburban problem. So, of course, anything that's white and suburban, then the kid gloves come on.
Right.
Not taken off, it gets taken on.
Mm-hmm.
So what St. Mary's County has done is the fact that they have decided to prosecute drug dealers for the overdose deaths of the heroin users. So this is where the media, our friend, comes in to perpetuate this racist narrative of even with the opioid epidemic, where we all should be on the same page of trying to heal one another. What they did was they showed 5 pictures or photos of white kids, white young adults who had recently died from heroin addiction. Mm-hmm. They showed 4 mugshots of the black drug dealers who allegedly sold them these drugs, right? Now, the 5 white young adults who died, unfortunately, from the addiction, they didn't show the photos of them when they had their mugshots. Because if you're on heroin, trust me, you've been to jail once or twice. There's a mugshot existing of you somewhere. They didn't show what they looked like when they was on heroin. They didn't show none of that. What you saw was high school graduation pictures, college graduation pictures, prom pictures, mm-hmm. pictures when they were at their cousin's wedding, mm-hmm. all this other kind of stuff, kayaking on the Hudson, all this stuff. The black drug dealers, mugshots, dreads, tatted up, and you know where I'm going with this. So again, if you're sitting in anywhere in your armchair in America, anywhere, you're going to immediately look at the white kids as victims, or the white young people as victims, mm-hmm. and you're going to look at these evil black drug dealers who put profit over human lives.
Look at those super predators.
Right. They're going to put profit over human lives as if as if this nation wasn't built on that. But they're going to put profit over human lives and say, look at these callous, dreaded, tattooed up people. Now the anger, and just for us to be so, I'm not defending these guys. What I'm saying is that the way that this stuff is, as Kiera said, manufacturing consent of racism. That's exactly what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So you got 4 mugshots of the drug dealers, but what about if they had the mugshots of the young people who lost their lives? Mm-hmm. I bet you public opinion would be a lot worse, or wouldn't be as positive towards them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you see this. So what happens is that now Trump is releasing this money. But you know what's happening? Guess who's not getting it? Guess who's not getting none of that money? There you go. Trump, a lot of that money that Trump is releasing is going to a lot of the rural areas that they say are having the hardest time dealing with this epidemic. But you don't hear anything about more policing.
No.
You don't hear any more about none of this. No, it's actually going to drug treatment. And I commend that. I'm not against it. But what Jackie and I had said on this show is that there's a way of dealing with it when it happens to black people, mm-hmm. and there's a way of it dealing when it happens to others. And so what we're saying is that justice cannot be justice unless there's equality. We are still suffering from the crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s. We are still, as a community, suffering from that. But you know what? They've studied what happened to our community, mm-hmm. and they know what can happen if they don't treat it where they live.
Right.
They understand that. Mm-hmm. So they watched how it destroyed our community. So now you know what happened? Government is responding in ways that it never responded to us. Mm-hmm. So you people out there who are advocates of not talking about identity politics or not talking about, we give you reason why we just cannot do that.
Yeah. So Daniel Goheen, I got to read your comment, Daniel. Thank you very much for hopping on. How much do you think it scares the 1% to having the chance of different cultures coming together? Been divided buttons, but if we could bridge that gap, if we can look past our skin colors, I realize we're all just people getting by trying to make fighting and system. Okay, what's happening in Charlottesville right now is why we can't get there. And that's not on us. Whenever people ask that question, the 1%, if we could just get together and fight against the 1%, we're not the ones, black people, brown people, Latinos, Asians, the people of color are not the ones who are not wanting to unite with other people and fight against the people who are oppressing us all. It's these bastards who show up in Charlottesville, the alt-right, the far right, the racists. It's the racists. We're not the ones you need to be asking that question to. And I understand that because it seems like we're the ones who are always having the dialogue about it, right? Because the only thing these people, the Richard Spencers and their ilk, want to talk about is taking their country back.
Well, they want a white state. They want a white-only state.
Exactly, because they want a white-only state. They don't want to work together with us. This is the thing. We can't work with these people. To suggest, and I'm not saying that you're suggesting this, Daniel. I'm just saying this in general to any progressive or liberal-minded person who continues to entertain these ideas that we can somehow work with racists and reason with these people. We can't.
That's right.
We can't, because they don't want to work with us. So I'm not going to work with somebody who has made it clear that my humanity is not important to them.
I mean, can you work with anybody who is advocating calling for a white-only state? You know what I mean? Jackie and I have never sat on this show and called for black-only territory. I mean, y'all lost, some of y'all lost your minds when we said we just wanted an office room for ourselves just so we could discuss, issues that relate to us. But you got folks outright calling for a white-only state. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So you think that folks like that are going to sit and care about my issues or Jackie's issues or issues of people of color? But Chanel said something. Again, we have done that before. Mm-hmm. Look at history. I'm gonna give you a quick example. Nathaniel Bacon, right? Because I love learning new stuff. Nathaniel Bacon, who in history, who led a rebellion back in the 1700s, and he led a rebellion, and the rebellion was the white elites was able to get him to turn the ire or anger of poor whites from the white elites who were screwing them to the Native Americans. So he went out and he started, warring with the Native Americans. And so what happened was he found out he was getting screwed. So then he turned away from killing Native Americans, going back after the white elites again. But guess what happened? He had black people join him, Native Americans join him. He had this ragtag pauper army of slaves, African slaves, poor whites, Native Americans. He had that.
Did you just call them a ragtag pauper?
A ragtag pauper army, right? We talking about the 1700s. No, they had no shoes or nothing. So they going, but they were soldiers, and they going out there. They went down. They burnt Jamestown, Virginia. They burnt it to the ground. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were going on. It scared the white elite so much of this diverse unity of poor people, African slaves, poor whites, Native Americans, everybody getting together against them, that they consciously came up and said that we have to separate the poor whites from the African. And how do we do that? We have to give the poor whites privileges.
Yep.
That's where the term white privilege come from. We have to give the poor whites privileges so that they will not see themselves on par with the African.
Yep.
This was a conscious decision that was made in history. So when we talk about white privilege, that's where that was rooted in. Mm-hmm. And so what happened is, you know what they did with the poor whites? They gave them jobs. Mm-hmm. You are an overseer.
They let them vote, even though they didn't have land, because at the time only land-owning white males could vote.
Right. You are able to be on a slave patrol. Mm-hmm. You are able to do this. You are able to do that. You are one of us. And that's what it was. See, prior to the Bacon Rebellion, a lot of poor whites a lot of them were indentured servants. They knew that they weren't part of that white elite class. So what happened, and a lot of them had relationships with the African slaves or African free people. But what happened after that rebellion, then it was like, no. We have to convince the poor whites that they're somewhat like us, that they're like us. We're in the same club. They just don't have what we have, but they have a vested interest in protecting us. And protecting us. And that's where the white privilege thing comes from. So like Chanel said, we have done that before. We have continued to do it. And so again, the burden of what Jackie said is true. The burden of trying to reason with these folks are not solely on the backs of black people or people of color. When someone has injured you, or when someone continues to injure you, then you know what? I can say ouch all I want, but unless the person who is causing me pain, Unless they can do all of that and recognize how much that they're hurting me, then we can't get anywhere. If they don't recognize my pain, then how are we going to bridge anything? And let's get back to that looking past skin color. I don't want you to look past my skin color.
Oh, come on.
And I'm not saying that as a critique, you know, or to pounce on anything that Daniel or anyone else says. But I am proud of my black skin. I am proud of the fact that God, the Creator, made me who I am. So you don't have to look past my skin. You don't have to pretend it doesn't exist. It does, and I love every bit of it. You know, so yeah. So I mean, so when we as progressives have to get past that idea that in order for me to deal with you, then I have to look past our differences. No, our differences is what makes us a beautiful world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So, and you shouldn't have to not want to work with me because of who I am. And you shouldn't have to look past me in order to say, you know, in order to be able to deal with me. So that's just my 2 cents.
And as Kier said, and we will end on this because you know we have snacks. we got to watch the rest of this stuff here that unfolding in Charlottesville. This is but as Kier said, you know, we need to stand together on black issues. We can't ask blacks to fight our issues if we ignore their issues. Injustice to one is injustice to all. That was from Kier Hardy. Larry Ham said the other night that out of the civil rights struggle and the uprisings across the country in the 60s in urban areas, we got Medicare, we got equal housing, we got more equality in education, we got not completely undiscriminated, but less discrimination in employment. We weren't the only ones who benefited from that legislation. So for liberals and progressives to not want to fight for black issues, you're literally cutting off your nose to spite your face. Because our issues benefit you, white liberals, white progressives. So, This has just been really interesting. We really just started out watching TV with the intention of watching a movie until we had to go to our appointment this afternoon. And then I saw online, hey, they're beating each other up in Charlottesville. Let's live stream.
Yeah. All right.
And,
okay.
You know, we're sitting here with our snacks watching this go on and just having this conversation about how this really is just the next phase on the timeline in history that has to happen. This has to happen. I don't know if what else is going to get us liberals, leftists, progressives, black folks, white folks who are fighting for justice. I don't know what else is going to get us up and out in the street. If you don't see that this is what we're fighting against, this is what we've been fighting against the whole time. This isn't some intellectual, cerebral kind of I just don't like you kind of racism. No, this is the racism that will come out to a protest with military and police gear, with pepper spray and loaded long guns waiting to shoot somebody. This is what we've been fighting against all this time. You gonna join us or what? So, thanks for joining us today. I hope you have some snacks because we're going to finish ours. Thank you very much. Share this video. Follow us on YouTube, Luke Mon Nation on YouTube. Follow us on Brick by Brick on YouTube also. The donate button is on the Luke Mon Nation YouTube site. So please donate. Whatever you can will help. We do have our Patreon account still. We will be going to Baltimore soon to begin taking stills for the documentary. Is that it?
That's it. That's what I see.
Thank you very much for joining us, y'all. Have a great afternoon. Be good to each other. Brewski says peace.
Peace.